Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this fantastic opportunity to tell you a few things about my project. This is a very exciting time for me, and I haven't finished the project yet. There are still things to do, but hopefully I'll be able to offer a good outline of what has been done so far. Obviously, I have to show my immense gratitude to my official guardian angel and my extra-official guardian angel, Tony and Jackie, for the support I have received. And thanks everybody for the fantastic experience of being able to share so many interesting conversations and experiences. I actually learned a lot of things yesterday with the Higher Education Academy report with Sarah and Tony when we were talking about this report that we have to write together, and I found that in an hour I learned more than in probably 2 or 3 months. So it was really fulfilling for me, and I spent this morning with the shower like 15 minutes going through everything, and you know, so it looks promising. We are encouraging, you know that we are encouraging in education to use a variety of delivery methods. So I'm going to be cheeky, and I'm going to put a video, but I'm also going to read some stuff, you know, go old-fashioned, read some parts of my report. And I don't know what this is, but I'll sort it out, okay? It doesn't matter. It's just that I can't see from there. Yeah, I wanted to, you know, we tend to talk about in what ways has the fellowship changed the way you worked or the way you are, you know, your profession. So this is me, this is moi before the fellowship, yeah, there with the bass, yeah, and the long hair, yeah, in my mate in a cellar in Leeds, and let me see if I can close this.
Oh, no, more of it.
No. Sorry. And this is me, transformed.
Oh, that's your research project that has been funded by a school here at the Open University. My project is for open educational resources.
So yeah, a remarkable transformation. So this video, and have you noticed I have shorter hair as well, yeah? So this video is
the after picture is meant to look better than the before picture.
So this is a video in the home box, and it's basically one of the outputs of the course that we did, the media training course. That was fantastic. I learned so many things, and I'm going to use this video to introduce you to the project. Yeah, instead of, I think it's a good video.
To introduce you to my research project that has been funded by a school here at the Open University. My project is for open educational resources, a new area in education, an uncharted territory. Open educational resources are going to transform the way in which students learn and the way in which teachers teach. I will concentrate on the critical review of open educational resources, but in particular I will be looking at resources published in the Homebox. The Homebox is an online repository where teachers can publish and share their learning materials on areas such as philosophy, religious studies, modern languages and cultures. I am interested in the critical review of the resources because I think it's a fascinating area. Here are some questions for you. Think about employers who give jobs to the students who graduate in our universities. Do you think they should be encouraged to write reviews on the learning resources that we use for our students in their degrees? In other words, do you think these employers can have a say in the curriculum? Do you think employers can help us to embed and identify critical employable skills in our learning activities? And then think about another set of questions. What happens when employers decide to engage? What happens when employers decide to write reviews about our resources? Where do they post their reviews? Where do they actually publish them? what happens with the engagement with the academic who publishes the resources, and crucially, what is the impact that these reviews, this participation of employers can have in our learning and teaching and in the way in which we publish resources. If you'd like to find out more about my project, please email me to the address on the screen. Thank you.
And some people indeed email, and let's get rid of this now. And I started, following the template of the report, I started with meetings with the Careers Centre of the University of Leeds and with different practitioners to see how we could go about finding out, piloting this employer engagement. In my report, I will outline the activities, and sorry, I need to press the button of the show. What is the show? Bottom left. Bottom left. It's just that from here I can't. Oh, thank you.
No, but this isn't working for some reason. The touch screen.
So these are the aims of the project: to propose feasible models of employee engagement through OERs, and hopefully add extra value to existing OERs and reinforce practice and reinforce communities of practice, encouraging high quality publication of resources. As you'll find out in a minute, I did so many other things apart from that because of the way in which my fellowship evolved. And I ended up working more generally on the area of engagement in OERs from institutions for showcasing purposes. Well, this is very important in my project. So I organized the research in the following way. I interviewed academics who had created resources in Humbox, and I had 16 questions on the following topics: review of OERs, endorsement of OERs, the function, the nature, the rationale of OER review and endorsement, employability in the curriculum. I had to address that question, obviously, it was very important, and how that employability could be embedded in learning activities and presented in OERs. And obviously employer engagement in OERs, especially through endorsement and reviewing, and perceptions that academics had, you know, with the entry in the OER spaces of these participants. Once I did those interviews, 10 interviews, some of them longer than an hour, really interesting, with a lot of valuable data, I asked the participants to select learning resources, learning designs, for them to be submitted to employers to see what employers have to say about them. So we engage in a reflection process of what is employability within the curriculum, how we can actually have a learning activity on philosophy or history that actually embeds, shows, tests, assess, whatever you want, employable skills, which, by the way, I like to call now life skills rather than employable skills. So I have changed that during the project. So here are some examples of the type of activities that we would have. Simulation with a professional scenario in which students are meant to undertake academic activities with a professional goal and in a professional scenario. Another possibility for embedding employability was academic content that is related to some of these skills. For instance, a video or a presentation on intercultural communication, students don't get to work with the skills, but they learn content that is important for the awareness and is important for the acquisition of those skills. And then we also had the traditional employable, extracurricular employable activities, but we didn't get any of those included in the pack of resources for the employers. The process of selection of resources was done individually, one-to-one between each one of the research participants and myself, and obviously we had the opportunity to reflect upon all these questions by looking specifically at the learning resources submitted. And each one of the participants had to fill in a form in which these reflections were documented. You know, why I think these resources are connected, are related, focus on employability within my curriculum. For ethical reasons, all this was, and still partly is, anonymous, and we can talk about the ethical aspect of it, which is very important later on. Now, employers. Once I had all the interviews, once I knew what the practitioners thought about this project and all these ideas, and I had the resources, I had to find the employers. In principle, it was meant to be employer groups, but the employer group who actually was very keen to support this initiative, the Association of Graduate Recruiters, said to me that it would be much better if individual employers, rather than the employer groups, engage in this practice. And I understand the reasons. I was adamant that it had to be employer groups because I thought they were representative of their constituency, and there wouldn't be any issues with participant selection. I wouldn't have to go and knocking at doors of corporations. But they insisted that if employers are going to value this type of engagement, we should test it with them rather than with the association. And I accepted it, and I had to redesign all the ethical protocols and the methodology. Carl Gillard, the chief executive of the Association of Graduate Recruiters, has been fantastic in his support with the project, and he organized the process of selection of participants. And in a few weeks, I had 8 large corporations who employed many of our graduates who were interested in finding out about the project and perhaps participating. And out of those 8, 6 actually took part into the interviews, and some of them are now in the process of writing the reviews. Some of them have been already posted. Obviously it was a completely different constituency when it came to research, because none of them knew really, except for one of the employers, none of them knew what open educational resources were. So I had to do staggered interviews with information, interview, activity, interview, trying to stagger the research in a way in which I could, you know, put them through the experience and at the same time get qualitative data out of it. So hence the picture of these people, like that, because that's what I had to do basically. So I gave information about OERs and the project. I told them about the homebooks. I gave them information that they needed to actually be prepared to confront the interview. Then we had a first interview with their takes, their views on employability, what they thought about this new concept of curricularly embedded employability, and obviously their contribution, how they saw themselves in relation to the higher education sector, and OERs. Then, once we went through all these interviews, then I prepared packs with resources from the different research participants, and some of them, not all of them, but some of the 6 participants, you know, were very keen on reviewing resources. So I sent them the resources totally anonymized with text or with files, with no indication of the institution, no indication of the person who was the author, and I sent them also what the authors had said themselves about the resource. And I collected these reviews from the employers. The employers had to look at the resource and say what they thought and answer a few questions. and then the following stage is an interview about the experience reviewing the resources. So I put them into a different situation. You know, they are experientially, in terms of the experience, they are better prepared to think about OERs and think about what it involves. And finally, the publication of reviews. There are some reviews already published, but this is not meant to be a big wave of reviews being published in the home box. It's in principle, it's a pilot experience, and many lessons have been learned from it. And the engagement, for reasons I'll explain in a minute, will have to happen after we move away from the constraints of the research protocols. Bear in mind that the research participants are anonymous, and until they don't publish, until when they publish the review and they show the names, then I can say, well, or you can gather this is one of the participants. So in principle, because of all the interviews and the data collection, participant identity, etc., I can't tell you who they are. The only corporation who has actually uploaded reviews, and you know, I told them, so do you want me to tell the world that you are one of these? Is the Co-op group in Manchester. But there are other corporations who are going to publish, hopefully, their reviews. And in any case, we have the data to find out how they feel about this experience, the potential that they see, etc. But don't expect a big wave of OERs and people, you know, publishing reviews 24/7 and tweeting about them. This is a pilot project, and I have an interesting range of data information to be used in future engagement. Then another important part of my project, which I didn't expect, was participation in two steering groups, one of them in Durham and the other one the University of Leeds, a steering group on OERs. We are designing now, and thanks also to Ian, we are designing now a proper institutional policy, which I think is quite progressive in the University of Leeds for OER production. And my participation in Durham, my participation in SCORE, all the insight I've gained with this idea of open education resources being showcased for specific purposes by institutions has allowed me to contribute to these two groups. And I think a lot of my project has, you know, my work in this project has actually been redirected into that direction. So this is everything I have to say about the activities. And now I'm going to go through the report talking about the outputs, my findings, reflection and conclusion. And I'm going to sit, if you don't mind, for the sake of variety. So the outputs, I have obviously some reviews. I'm preparing a guide for external engagement through OER, a good practice guide, because there are a lot of small details about how to approach engagement between academic institutions and employers. And there are many things that were relatively obvious, some of this were not. So if anybody wants to use this type of initiative in their own institution to showcase their resources and to add value to them and bring in employees, etc., at least you know what steps you need to follow. So that's one important output. The other important output is the Higher Education Academy report. Then I'm giving a talk on the 4th of July at the University of Greenwich. The conference is called Employer Engagement in a Digital Age. It couldn't be more appropriate. And I'm doing a paper presenting the second part of the research. And I presented something as well in Cambridge, and you can read the abstract and see the presentation. And then there's a number of smaller presentations throughout the country, and videos and little things. The findings. Well, the first finding, the academics' views on employer engagement in OER reviewing and endorsement are extremely varied. These views relate to current discourses and issues on the social function of higher education and its new economic and institutional scenario. At the same time, theories about quality of OERs and theories about the reuse of OERs, which have been formulated in the context of sustainability, inform practitioners' views on OER reviewing and endorsing as functions. The project proposes that in the UK, in higher education UK context, greater consideration to the review and endorsement of OERs must be given in order to be prepared to face the new sustainability challenges in the UK and in other countries. However, this project has found that review and endorsement are just two of the several ways in which a wide range of users can attribute relevance to resources. Before this project, these functions had not been really regarded as an essential part of the production and dissemination of OERs. But with the proposal of a fifth R, a category which I have called relevance attribution, resulting from the research and reflection carried out, review and endorsement can now share a central place with other activities which include showcasing and repository architecture. Employers' organizations are increasingly committed to the promotion of employability within higher education. However, engagement between academic practitioners and employers on matters relating to curricular employability is a completely new concept. And using open educational resources reviewing for this engagement goes beyond most graduate recruiters' expectations. Out of all the existing links between employers and universities, the strongest one is the one between universities' career centers and recruiters. And this link is highly symbiotic. I think that the best way to engage with employers in these kind of initiatives is by tapping into these existing relationships. OER reviewing and endorsement and other forms of relevance attribution and even OER co-production can flourish in existing one-to-one partnerships, University X with employer Y. Pan-institutional engagement is not really feasible in this current scenario, in my experience. Employers prefer to act individually and deal with individual universities. The question of business engagement with higher education through OER, through any mechanism of relevance attribution, or by simply creating or sharing their own existing resources, was seen as an interesting option for some businesses as part of their corporate responsibility and reputation building. However, this involvement would need further research, getting digital branding managers within those corporations involved. Employers may want, you have to think about employers as recruiters but also as businesses, and I've been dealing with graduate recruiters who are interested in these relationships through career centers of each university, but then the whole area of digital branding and reputation and corporate responsibility of that corporation is something that is beyond the reach of the recruiters who are in charge of getting fresh blood in the form of new graduates into the workforce of the corporation. So this option of them being more involved in OERs through different activities has to be researched, explored with actually the people who are in charge of corporate responsibility, digital branding of those corporations. I mentioned before, although my participation in the Durham Steering Group and the University of Leeds OERs Steering Group was not part of my research, the insight I've gained thanks to my project has allowed me to influence decisions in these committees, and in turn my work in those groups has certainly influenced the direction of my research in the project and beyond. one of the most important findings of my experience in these groups are that institution motives for OER engagement have a strong marketing and reputational component, and they differ, particularly in repositories with no professional profiling, from the attitudes of existing OERs practitioners. So the motives from institutions and the motives from people like us who are engaging in OERs are different, especially in repositories where you don't get to profile yourself around the resources. So OER institutional policies will have to accommodate both strands of OER practice, the institutional top-down initiatives and the practitioners' existing OER sharing practices, and make sure that there is coordination between those two strands and the digital branding efforts of the universities themselves, because OERs are part of digital branding. So those are my findings, and then where is the other page? Page what? Yeah, the reflection. I mean, everything is reflection, really, but yeah, before this project, I had a relatively simplistic and monolithic view of employers and businesses in relation to their involvement in higher education, which, you know, is shared by many people. During the time of my project, I have discovered that the employers' body, including both employer groups and employers themselves, is highly diverse. Graduate recruiters can have very different views on OERs, even when faced with the same experience and the same research questions. The focus of my work with employers was around collaboration between employer groups and employers with higher education through OERs and employability, but I have discovered, as I mentioned before, that within the same organization, people in charge of different areas will have different motives to engage with OERs, and this should be the focus of more research. Moving into the probably hundreds, not hundreds, but tens of educators, practitioners that I've, you know, encountered with, as part of my project, people I've talked about the project. The vast majority of educators in UK, in my experience, and employers that have come across outside my Humbox score Jorum circles of practice feel very attracted by OERs as a technological development. However, once they understand some of the basic features of OERs, they tend to see them, the OERs, exclusively as one of the many means of achieving educational goals, specific educational goals. There are still a lot of cultural obstacles in the way of OER publishing. If we want to make OER publishing relatively mainstream practice, we actually need to overcome these obstacles. To provide one illuminating example, one education manager practitioner connected to my study, who was not a research participant at all, regarded the attitude of teachers adapting others' materials to their own ends as cynical. This is quite shocking, that people who are supposed to understand and know what OERs are and the value, etc., you know, they come back later, a few months later, and tell you, yeah, can you imagine teachers adapting cynically to their own ends these learning materials? And well, that's what they are supposed to do. Yeah. Many colleagues, and this is for you, you remember, Gabby, when we had this conversation here when David Wiley was here, many colleagues in the OER movement wonder how to build the institutional case for OERs in higher education, and everybody points at institutions protectionism. In my experience, and I don't know if this will be confirmed with future developments, in my experience it can be easier to build this case at policy-making level than to change an entrenched culture of pedagogical autarky reinforced by current structures and research agendas. The OER movement in higher education is practitioner-led, and lots of the good work carried out so far has been organized at faculty or subject level with the tacit acceptance of the institution. any success in implementing an ambitious policy of OER release at institutional level will create a top-down pressure on non-open educational practitioners. So a whole new set of issues in the area of organizational change will have to be researched and discussed by OER specialists. More things, yeah. Having discussed the usefulness and desirability of OERs with many practitioners and policymakers during all this time, another lesson learned in this project is that the best way to ensure that OERs publishing in higher education UK have a chance to become more widely used is for more of us to become more involved in non-OER educational practice and to be able to offer OERs as a response to immediate educational challenges as perceived by non-OER practitioners. I know this is very controversial. Also, OERs must be offered as an option to these challenges in conjunction with other options that may not involve OER practice at all. The study of OERs, obviously, as a field, requires specialist, dedicated OER practitioners and investment in specific OER projects, but the strategies for OER sustainability must move from self-discovery and status building to educational permeation. Open education is an end in itself, which I support, and OERs are essential for its fulfillment. However, OERs should be seen as a means to all types of education. And this is very much related to the discussions that we had in Cambridge 12 about promoting the inclusion of a wide range of non-education organizations in the OER production and dissemination circuits. The discussion between idealism and pragmatism, which David Wiley and others have engaged through very interesting blogging and other activities. Dissemination. Apart from the dissemination of outputs mentioned in this report through traditional academic channels, the project intends to further the dissemination efforts by tapping into interest groups and organizations who will amplify its outcomes.
Getting close to running out of time.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, how much more time?
Minus 2 minutes.
Minus 2 minutes. Okay, is there anything that you must know before you go? Yes, that for open educational resources to be labeled as employability related OERs, there are some features that they must possess. Not everything. This is another thing that we in the academic sector, the educationalists, we actually go and brand things with, oh, this is related to employability. Well, employers think differently from us. I'm not saying that they are right, but there is a lot of negotiation there to happen. And yes, you can read the rest in the report because hopefully it will be public. Sorry I've gone over the time.
No, thank you. I'm not entirely surprised, but
sorry.
Wow, that is so rich.